Maxwell Pierce stood frozen in his garage, staring at his pristine Ferrari where two small children slept peacefully in the leather seats. The twins, a boy and girl no older than 6, had somehow bypassed his estate's security. Their clothes were worn but clean, their faces angelic in slumber. Maxwell's first instinct was to call security, but something made him hesitate. A folded paper protruded from the little girl's pocket. With trembling fingers, he carefully extracted it, unfolding the wrinkled note. The handwriting was hauntingly familiar, his father's unmistakable script. As he read, the blood drained from his face, his knees buckled, sending him collapsing against the car. Could these children truly be the secret his father had taken to the grave? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning had begun like any other in Maxwell Pierce's meticulously ordered life. He woke precisely at 5:30 a.m., completed his 40-minute workout in his private gym, and showered in his marble-tiled bathroom where the water temperature was preset to exactly 103 degrees. His breakfast, a carefully measured protein shake and avocado toast, awaited him in his minimalist kitchen, prepared by his household staff who knew better than to disturb him during his morning routine. Maxwell straightened his Italian silk tie, the final touch to his impeccable appearance. At 42, he maintained the disciplined physique of a man 10 years younger, his dark hair showing only distinguished touches of silver at the temples. His face, handsome in a stern way, rarely softened with a smile these days. He clipped his Pierce Industries executive badge to his jacket pocket, the same ritual he'd performed for 15 years. The weight of it felt reassuring, a tangible symbol of his position as CEO of the technology empire his father had built and he had expanded. The badge granted him access to every corner of Pierce Tower, though few employees ever saw him use. The general entrances, the call from his security team, had disrupted everything. "Sir, there's been a breach on the estate grounds," his head of security had reported, tension evident in his voice. Maxwell had expected many things, perhaps industrial espionage or an overzealous journalist. What he hadn't expected was to find two small children curled up asleep in his prized Ferrari F8 Tributo, a car he rarely drove but kept immaculately maintained in his climate-controlled garage. Now, as he steadied himself against the gleaming hood, the note trembled in his hand. His father's distinctive handwriting, with its sharp angles and heavy pressure, was unmistakable. "Maxwell, these are Emma and Ethan. They are your half-siblings. Their mother, Sarah, has passed away. I visited them whenever I could. They have nowhere else to go. They are Pierces. Do what I never could. Be the family they deserve. Dad." The garage door opened, and Victoria Chen entered, her heels clicking sharply against the polished concrete floor. At 38, Victoria had served as Maxwell's executive assistant for nearly a decade, evolving into the closest thing he had to a confidant. "You're late for the quarterly," Victoria began, then stopped abruptly when she saw the children. "Max, what's going on?" Maxwell silently handed her the note, watching as her professional composure momentarily faltered. "Your father never mentioned—" she began. "No," Maxwell cut her off, his voice tight. "He never did." He glanced at his watch, a habit when uncomfortable, and thought of the boardroom full of executives waiting for him. For 15 years, Pierce Industries had been his sole focus, his identity. He had sacrificed everything for it after his father had groomed him to take over, criticizing his every mistake, demanding perfection. William Pierce had been a titan of industry, brilliant and ruthless. He'd built Pierce Industries from nothing into a tech giant, but as a father, he had been cold, demanding, and often absent. Maxwell's childhood memories were filled with missed baseball games, cancelled vacations, and stiff, formal dinners where his achievements were acknowledged with nothing more than a curt nod. Their relationship had grown even more strained in the final years before William's death 3 months ago. They'd barely spoken outside of board meetings, and Maxwell had not been at his father's bedside when he passed. The funeral had been a corporate affair, with Maxwell delivering a eulogy that spoke of William's business acumen, but little of the man himself. "What are you going to do?" Victoria asked, gently returning the note. Maxwell stared at the sleeping children. The girl, Emma, according to the note, clutched a worn teddy bear. Her small hand rested protectively on her brother's arm. They looked peaceful, unaware that their world had collapsed and been rebuilt in the span of a handwritten note. "Call Jenkins," Maxwell said finally, referring to the company's legal counsel. "Tell him I need to know my options and reschedule the board meeting." Victoria raised an eyebrow. In 15 years, Maxwell had never voluntarily missed a board meeting. "And then?" she prompted. Maxwell ran a hand through his perfectly coiffed hair, disheveling it slightly, another unprecedented event. "And then help me figure out what to do with 2 6-year-olds. I don't know the first thing about children." As if on cue, the little girl stirred, her eyes fluttering open. For a moment she looked confused, then frightened as she took in the unfamiliar surroundings. Her gaze settled on Maxwell, and he felt something unexpected, a jolt of recognition. Her eyes were the same distinctive grey-blue as his father's, as his own. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice small but surprisingly steady. "Where's my mommy?" Maxwell Pierce, who confidently addressed shareholders and negotiated billion-dollar deals, found himself completely at a loss for words. Victoria stepped forward, kneeling beside the Ferrari. "Hello there," she said gently to Emma. "My name is—" "Victoria, this is Mr. Pierce. What's your name, sweetheart?" "Emma," the little girl replied, still clutching her teddy bear. She nudged her brother awake. "Ethan, wake up!" The boy's eyes opened, revealing the same striking grey-blue as his sister's. Unlike Emma, who regarded the adults with cautious curiosity, Ethan immediately shrank back, wrapping his arms protectively around his sister. "It's okay," Emma whispered to him. "Daddy said we'd be safe here." Maxwell flinched at the word daddy. His father, their father, had clearly meant something very different to these children than he had to Maxwell. "Are you hungry?" Victoria asked, filling the awkward silence. Both children nodded tentatively. "I'll have Mrs. Winters prepare something," Maxwell said, grateful for a reason to step away. Mrs. Winters, his housekeeper, would be as surprised as he was by this development, but she was discreet and efficient. In the kitchen, Maxwell paced while Mrs. Winters, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, processed the information with remarkable composure. "Poor little lambs," she said, already pulling ingredients from the refrigerator. "Losing their mother and being sent to a strange place. They must be terrified." Maxwell hadn't considered that. He'd been too caught up in his own shock to think about what the children might be feeling. When he returned to the garage, Victoria had coaxed the twins out of the Ferrari and was leading them toward the house, speaking softly. Emma still clutched her teddy bear, a worn, once white creature missing an eye and with stuffing poking through a seam. "This is a very nice house," Emma said, her eyes wide as they entered the soaring foyer with its marble floors and contemporary. "Artwork, thank you," Maxwell replied stiffly, unused to casual conversation. "Where will we sleep?" Ethan asked, speaking for the first time. His voice was soft but clear. The question caught Maxwell off guard. He hadn't thought beyond the immediate crisis. His 10-bedroom mansion had never housed children before. The guest rooms were designed for business associates and the occasional adult visitor, not 6-year-olds. "We'll find you somewhere comfortable," Victoria assured them, giving Maxwell a pointed look. Over breakfast, which the children ate with careful manners that seemed at odds with their worn clothing, Maxwell observed them more closely. They were small for their age, with delicate features that reminded him of old photos of his grandmother. Emma was the more talkative of the two, occasionally answering questions or commenting on the house. Ethan remained watchful and quiet, staying close, To his sister. When did your mother? Maxwell trailed off, unsure how to phrase the question. Mommy went to heaven 2 weeks ago, Emma said matter-of-factly, though her lower lip trembled slightly. She was sick for a long time. The nice lady from the hospital helped us pack our things, Ethan added. Then the man with the grey hair came and brought us here. Maxwell and Victoria exchanged glances. What man? Maxwell asked. Daddy's friend, Emma explained. He said Daddy couldn't come get us himself because he was in heaven too, but that his son would take care of us now. Maxwell felt a chill. Someone had deliberately brought these children to him. Someone who had known about his father's secret family when Maxwell himself had been completely in the dark. Did this man tell you his name? Victoria asked gently. Both children shook their heads. He just said to give the note to the man who owned the pretty car, Ethan said. After breakfast, Victoria helped settle the children in the media room with a movie. Thankfully, Maxwell's extensive collection included some children's films, purchased for corporate events with employees' families. We need to verify this, Max, Victoria said when they stepped into his study. The timing is too convenient. Your father passes away, these children lose their mother, and suddenly they appear on your doorstep. Maxwell nodded, already pulling out his phone. I'll call Dr. Weiss. He can come here and do DNA testing discreetly. And what about Pierce Industries? The board meeting can wait, Maxwell interrupted, surprising himself as much as Victoria. This takes precedence. Later, when Dr. Weiss had come and gone, having taken cheek swabs from both Maxwell and the twins with minimal fuss, Maxwell found himself alone with the children again. Victoria had gone to the office to handle the most pressing matters, and Mrs. Winters was preparing rooms for them. Emma approached him cautiously, still holding her teddy bear. His name is Button, she said, holding the bear up. He's a little broken, but Mommy said that's okay, because the best things sometimes get a little worn out from being loved too much. Maxwell stared at the shabby toy, then at the child offering this small piece of her world to him. For the first time since finding them in his car, he felt something other than shock and confusion, a twinge of something that might have been compassion. Button seems like a good friend, he said finally. Emma nodded solemnly. He helps keep the bad dreams away. Do you have bad dreams often? Maxwell asked. Since Mommy went to heaven, she admitted. Ethan, too. Across the room, Ethan watched them, his small face serious and assessing. Maxwell had the distinct feeling he was being evaluated, and quite possibly found wanting. That evening, after Mrs. Winters had helped the twins settle into hastily prepared rooms, Maxwell sat alone in his study, the note from his father spread. Before him, on his mahogany desk, he'd read it a dozen times, searching for answers between the sparse lines. He pulled open the bottom drawer and removed a bottle of 30-year-old scotch and a crystal tumbler. A ritual he rarely indulged in. He was halfway through his second drink when Victoria returned, carrying a slim folder. I did some digging, she said without preamble. Sarah Miller, age 35, died of advanced lymphoma 2 weeks ago in Portland. She worked as a librarian. No immediate family except the twins. Maxwell took the folder. Inside was a death certificate, a newspaper obituary with a small photo, and documentation from a Portland hospital. The woman in the photo had a gentle smile and light hair. Nothing about her suggested the type of person who would have an affair with William Pierce, tech mogul and notorious workaholic. There's more, Victoria said, handing him another document. A birth certificate for Emma and Ethan Miller. Father, listed, William Edward Pierce. He acknowledged them, Maxwell said quietly, staring at his father's name on the official document. There's a letter too, Victoria added, her voice softening. It was with Mrs. Miller's personal effects at the hospital. Addressed to you. Maxwell took the sealed envelope with unsteady hands. The handwriting was different from his father's, more rounded, with delicate loops. He opened it carefully. Dear Maxwell, my name is Sarah Miller. By the time you read this, I will have passed away. I'm sorry for the burden I'm placing on you, but I have no one else to turn to. Your father and I met 15 years ago at a literacy fundraiser in Portland. We never meant for our relationship to continue, but it did, on and off, for several years. When I discovered I was pregnant with twins, William supported me financially but couldn't leave his family or company. He visited whenever he could. Emma. And Ethan know him as their father, and he loved them dearly. In his own way, he tried to be there for them. In recent years, William spoke often about reconciling with you. He regretted the distance between you. He also spoke about introducing you to the children someday, though he never found the courage. I have no right to ask anything of you, but my children have no one else. William set up a trust for their education, but they need more than money. They need family. I understand if you cannot keep them. If that's your decision, William made arrangements with his attorney, Richard Jenkins, to place them with a good family. But if there is any way you could find room in your life for them, know that they are good children who have already lost too much. With deepest regrets and gratitude, Sarah Miller Maxwell put down the letter, emotions warring within him. Anger at his father's deception, betrayal at the revelation of a secret life, confusion about this woman who had clearly meant something to William Pierce, and underneath it all, a strange sense of loss for a relationship with his father that could never be repaired now. Jenkins knew, he said finally, focusing on the one concrete fact he could grasp. All this time, my father's attorney knew about this secret family. It appears so, Victoria confirmed. I've scheduled a meeting with him for tomorrow morning. Maxwell nodded absently, his gaze drifting to the birth certificate again. 6 years old. For 6 years, his father had been living a double life, visiting these children, being the kind of father to them that he had never been to Maxwell. The board needs to be informed, Victoria said gently. There will be questions about succession and the family trust. The Pierce name means something in this industry. The Pierce name, Maxwell echoed hollowly. What does it mean now? My father, the great William Pierce, paragon of business ethics and family values, had a secret family stashed away in Portland. People are complicated, Max, Victoria said. No one is just one thing. A soft knock interrupted them. Mrs. Winters stood at the door, concern etched on her lined face. I'm sorry to disturb you, Mr. Pierce, but the little girl Emma is asking for you. She's had a nightmare. Maxwell stared at the housekeeper, momentarily at a loss. In his 42 years, no one had ever sought him out for comfort after a bad dream. What am I supposed to do? He asked, genuine confusion in his voice. Mrs. Winters gave him a look that bordered on pity. Just sit with her for a bit, sir. Sometimes that's all a child needs, to know they're not alone. Reluctantly, Maxwell followed her to the guest room that had been hastily converted for Emma. The room, designed in neutral tones for business associates, looked starkly inappropriate for a child. Emma sat up in the massive four-poster bed, her small form nearly swallowed by the plush duvet. Tears streaked her cheeks, and she clutched Button tightly. I'm sorry, she whispered when she saw Maxwell. I had the bad dream again. It's all right, Maxwell said awkwardly, perching on the edge of the bed. What was it about? Mommy disappearing, Emma said, her voice small. I keep trying to find her, but she's gone. Maxwell felt something twist in his chest, a visceral memory of his own childhood nightmares after his mother died when he was 10. The same helpless feeling, the same desperate search in dreams. I used to have dreams. Like that too, he found himself saying. When I was young. Emma looked up at him, surprise cutting through her distress. You did? Yes. My mother died when I was a boy. Does it stop hurting? She asked, the directness of children cutting to the heart of things. Maxwell considered. Lying then decided against it. Not entirely, but it gets quieter with time. Morning arrived with a sense of unreality. Maxwell woke early as usual, but found his routine disrupted by the knowledge that 2 children slept down the hall. Children who might be his half-siblings. He'd spent most of the night in his study, reviewing Sarah Miller's letter and the documents Victoria had gathered, searching for inconsistencies or evidence of deception. He found none. The twins were already in the kitchen when he arrived, sitting at the massive island where he usually took his solitary breakfast. Mrs. Winters was making pancakes, an item never before served in Maxwell Pierce's household. "Good morning, Mr. Pierce," Emma said formally, her legs swinging beneath the high stool. Ethan offered a small nod, his attention focused on a glass of orange juice. "Good morning," Maxwell replied, accepting the coffee Mrs. Winters handed him. "Did you sleep well after the nightmare?" "Button helped," Emma said, indicating the teddy bear seated beside her plate. "And knowing you had bad dreams too." Something about her simple trust made Maxwell uncomfortable. She didn't know him, had no reason to believe he'd look after her. Yet here she sat, accepting pancakes in his kitchen as if she belonged. His phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Weiss. "Results in. Available to discuss when you're ready. Mrs. Winters, could you watch?" "The children for an hour?" Maxwell asked. "I have an important call." In his study, Maxwell connected the video call. Dr. Weiss, a discreet physician who had treated the Pierce family for decades, appeared on screen. "I expedited the analysis as requested," he began without preamble. "The results are conclusive. Both children share enough genetic markers with you to confirm they are your half-siblings. Same father, different mother." Maxwell had expected this result, yet hearing it confirmed made it undeniably real. These weren't random children dropped into his life. They were Pierce's, his blood. "Thank you, Doctor," he said mechanically. "I appreciate your discretion." After ending the call, Maxwell sat motionless, staring at the family portrait on his desk, himself as a teenager, stiffly posed beside his father, both wearing suits, neither smiling. It had been taken shortly after his mother's death, when William Pierce had thrown himself even more completely into his work, leaving Maxwell to be raised primarily by boarding schools and summer programs. Designed for future leaders, the sound of childish laughter drifted. From somewhere in the house, an alien sound in these austere halls. Maxwell found himself following it to the media room, where he discovered Ethan and Emma watching a cartoon with Mrs. Winters. Ethan was actually smiling, the first time Maxwell had seen this expression on the solemn boy's face. The ringing of his phone interrupted the moment. "Jenkins, Pierce," he answered, stepping into the hallway. "Maxwell," Jenkins's smooth voice replied. "I understand you've had some unexpected visitors. I've been trying to reach you." "You knew," Maxwell said coldly. "All these years, you knew about my father's other family." A pause. "It was a legal matter between myself and your father. Client confidentiality." "Don't," Maxwell cut him off. "Don't pretend this was just business. You helped him hide them." "I helped him provide for them," Jenkins corrected. "And I'm prepared to help you handle this situation discreetly. The board is already asking questions about your cancelled meeting yesterday. Pierce Industries doesn't need a scandal. I'll be in touch," Maxwell said curtly, ending the call. When he returned to the media room, the cartoon had ended. Mrs. Winters was showing the twins' photo albums she'd found somewhere. Old pictures of Pierce family events. "Is that you?" Emma asked, pointing to a photo of a solemn-faced boy holding a science fair trophy. "Yes," Maxwell confirmed, surprised she'd recognized him. "You look sad," she observed. Maxwell had never thought of himself as sad in childhood. Focused. Serious, driven, yes. But looking at the photo through Emma's eyes, he saw what she meant. There was no joy in that child's achievement, only grim determination. "It was complicated," he said finally. "That's what Mommy said about Daddy not living with us," Ethan said unexpectedly. "She said it was complicated." Victoria arrived as they were finishing lunch, carrying shopping bags. "I thought the children might need some things," she explained. Setting down clothes, toys, and books, Emma's eyes widened at a stuffed unicorn. "Is this for me?" "If you like it," Victoria said with a gentle smile. "I've never had a new toy before," Emma whispered, stroking the unicorn's sparkly mane. "Just Button, and he was Mommy's when she was little." The simple statement hit Maxwell like a physical blow. His father had provided financially for these children, yet they'd clearly lived modestly. Meanwhile, he'd spent more on his watch than Sarah Miller had likely spent on her children in a year. "The DNA results are in," he told Victoria when they stepped away. "They're definitely his. So what happens now?" she asked. Maxwell glanced back at the children, who were excitedly exploring Victoria's purchases. "I don't know. I'm not equipped for this. My home, my life, none of it is designed for children. Few people are ever truly ready for parenthood." "Max," Victoria said gently, "even when they plan for it." "I'm not their parent," he said quickly. "No, you're their half-brother, but you're also the only family they have left." His phone buzzed again, multiple texts from board members inquiring about his absence and the rumored family emergency. Pierce Industries wouldn't wait forever. The quarterly numbers needed approval. The new product line launch required his sign-off, and investors were waiting for his annual strategic vision presentation. Yet, for the first time in his adult life, Maxwell Pierce found himself wondering if there might be something more important than Pierce Industries. The Pierce Industries boardroom fell silent as Maxwell entered, Victoria 2 steps behind him. The massive table, carved from a single redwood, seated 12 of the most influential executives in the tech industry. All eyes turned to their CEO, curiosity barely disguised behind professional veneers. "Gentlemen, ladies," Maxwell nodded, taking his seat at the head of the table. "Thank you for your patience. Let's begin." He launched into the quarterly report with practiced precision, discussing revenue projections and market expansions as if the last 48 hours hadn't completely upended his life. Only Victoria noticed the slight tension in his shoulders, the occasional moment when his focus seemed to drift. Maxwell was halfway through his presentation when Edward Jenkins, the company's chief legal counsel and his father's longtime friend, cleared his throat meaningfully. "While the numbers are certainly impressive," Jenkins said, his voice smooth as polished marble, "I think we should address the elephant in the room." He glanced around at the other board members. "There are rumors circulating about a family situation." Maxwell kept his expression neutral. "My personal affairs are not the concern of this board." "With respect," Jenkins continued, "anything involving the Pierce name is the concern of this company. Our brand is built on your father's legacy of integrity and family values." "Family values," Maxwell repeated, the words tasting bitter. He thought of the photograph in his study, his father's stern, unsmiling face next to his own, a perfect image of the Pierce family that had been a carefully constructed lie. "What Mr. Jenkins is trying to say?" Margaret Chen, head of public relations, interjected, "is that we should be prepared if this becomes public. 2 children suddenly appearing, claiming to be William Pierce's—" "They are William Pierce's children," Maxwell cut in. "DNA confirmed." A ripple of murmurs circled the table. Jenkins leaned forward, steepling his fingers. "All the more reason to handle this carefully," he said. "I've taken the liberty of drafting several options. The most straightforward would be to honor the arrangements your father made. Provide financially for the children while placing them with a suitable family. Discreet, compassionate, and clean. You've been waiting for this moment, haven't you, Jenkins?" Maxwell asked quietly. "You knew they would surface eventually." Jenkins didn't flinch. "I advised your father on many matters, Maxwell. This was one of them. My concern now is for Pierce Industries and its shareholders. A scandal? There won't be a scandal unless we create one," Victoria interrupted. "These are children who have lost both parents. How we treat them says everything about what this company truly values." The meeting concluded without resolution, but the lines had been drawn. As executives filed out, Jenkins lingered. "Your father worked his entire life to build this company," he said once they were alone. "Everything he did was to secure its future. And yours. Don't throw that away on sentimentality. Is that what he told himself? Maxwell asked. That abandoning his children was for their own good? He didn't abandon them, Jenkins replied sharply. He provided for them, visited them. He did what he could within the constraints of his position. His position, Maxwell echoed. The great William Pierce couldn't risk his reputation by acknowledging his own children. It was complicated, Jenkins said, unconsciously echoing Ethan's words from earlier. William made his choices. Now you need to make yours. Back at the mansion, Maxwell found himself wandering into his father's study, a room he rarely entered since William's death. It remained exactly as his father had left it, from the leather-bound books to the antique globe in the corner. Maxwell had always viewed this room as the inner sanctum of Pierce Industries, where his father had made the decisions that shaped their corporate empire. Now he found himself looking for traces of the other William Pierce, the one who had visited Portland to see his secret children. Had there been photos hidden in desk drawers, mementos tucked behind business journals? Mr. Pierce? Maxwell turned to find Ethan standing in the doorway, hesitant but curious. This was your father's room, Maxwell said. Surprised by the boy's appearance, Ethan nodded, taking a cautious step inside. It smells like him. Maxwell inhaled, suddenly recognizing the lingering scent of his father's pipe tobacco and sandalwood. Cologne, smells so familiar he'd stopped noticing them. Did he come to see you often? Maxwell asked, watching the boy closely. For birthdays and Christmas, Ethan said, and sometimes just because. He brought me this once. The boy reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wooden car, hand-carved, and polished to a soft shine. He said he made it himself. Maxwell stared at the toy, a strange tightness in his chest. His father had never made anything for him, had never seemed to have time for such simple gestures. He told stories about you, Ethan continued, running his finger along the spines of the books, about how smart you were and how you were going to run the company someday. He talked about me? Maxwell couldn't hide his surprise. Ethan nodded. He had a picture of you in his wallet. He showed us sometimes. Before Maxwell could process this revelation, a crash from upstairs shattered the moment. He and Ethan rushed to find Emma standing amid the shards of a broken vase in the upstairs hallway, her face pale with fear. I'm sorry, she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. I just wanted to smell the flowers. The Ming Dynasty vase, worth more than most cars, lay in pieces around her feet. Maxwell had purchased it at auction years ago, more as an investment than decoration. Don't move, he said sharply, concern making his voice harsher than intended. You'll cut yourself. Emma flinched at his tone, and tears spilled down her cheeks. Are you going to send us away now? The question, so direct and filled with fear, stopped Maxwell cold. Is that what they expected? To be discarded at the first mistake? No, he said, softening his voice. It was just a vase. The important thing is that you're not hurt. As he carefully lifted Emma away from the broken porcelain, her small arms wrapped around his neck in silent gratitude. It was the first time either child had initiated physical contact with him, and Maxwell found himself awkwardly patting her back, an unfamiliar warmth spreading through his chest. 3 days into his unexpected guardianship, Maxwell found himself standing in a bookstore staring at a wall of parenting guides. After the vase incident, he'd realized how utterly unprepared he was for the presence of children in his life. His instinct had been to call Victoria, but something had stopped him. This was his responsibility, his family, and he needed to at least try to handle it himself. He selected a thick volume titled Child Psychology, Understanding Development and Emotional Needs, and added it to his basket alongside books on helping children cope with grief and a few illustrated stories Victoria had suggested might appeal to 6-year-olds. The cashier smiled warmly at his selections. Your children will love these, she said as she rang up the purchases. Maxwell didn't correct her assumption. It was easier than explaining the truth. Back at the mansion, He found Mrs. Winters supervising as Emma and Ethan drew pictures at the dining table, another first for the formal space. "Look what we made," Emma said excitedly, holding up a crayon drawing of 3 stick figures standing beside what appeared to be a red car. "It's you and me and Ethan by your Ferrari." "I see that," Maxwell said, examining the picture with more care than he'd ever given to a child's artwork. The tallest figure wore what looked like a tie and had a straight line for a mouth. "You could smile more," Emma informed him matter-of-factly. "Mommy said smiling makes your heart bigger." "Did she?" Maxwell murmured, noting Ethan's picture. A detailed drawing of the mansion's exterior, surprisingly accurate for a 6-year-old. "You're very observant," he told the boy, who looked up with quiet pride. "Father said, I have an engineer's eye," Ethan replied, the slip into present tense revealing how recent his loss remained. That evening, after the children had gone to bed, Maxwell settled in his study with the child psychology book. He was halfway through the 2nd chapter when his phone rang. "Victoria, how are things going?" she asked. "We survived another day," Maxwell replied. "But I had to cancel the Tokyo meeting. I can't exactly leave them alone while I fly halfway around the world." "I've been thinking about that," Victoria said. "My sister runs a daycare center. She might know someone qualified who could help. A nanny or au pair." Maxwell considered the suggestion. A professional childcare provider made sense. His home wasn't child-friendly, his schedule wasn't flexible, and he had no experience with children. "That might be best," he agreed. "But they'll need to be discreet. I don't want the media getting wind of this yet." After hanging up, Maxwell returned to his book, but found his thoughts drifting to the twins' future. If he kept them, and that remained a significant if, everything would need to change. His home, his schedule, perhaps even Pierce Industries itself. He was still pondering these implications when a small cry broke the silence. He followed the sound to Emma's room, where he found her tangled in the sheets, tears streaming down her face. "The bad dream again?" he asked softly, sitting beside her. She nodded, clutching button. "I couldn't find you either this time," she whispered. The admission stunned him. In her nightmare, she had been searching not just for her mother but for him as well. "I'm right here," he said, awkwardly patting her hand. "Try to go back to sleep." "Could you stay?" she asked in a small voice. "Just until I fall asleep?" Maxwell hesitated, then nodded, settling into the armchair beside her bed. As Emma's breathing slowed into the rhythm of sleep, he found himself studying her face. There was something of his father there, in the determined set of her chin, but her features were softer, gentler than any Pierce he'd known. He must have dozed off himself, because the next thing he knew, sunlight was streaming through the curtains, and Emma was gone from her bed. Alarmed, he hurried downstairs to find both children already in the kitchen with Mrs. Winters helping to mix pancake batter. "Good morning, Mr. Pierce." Mrs. Winters greeted him with a knowing smile. "The children." "Let me know you had a late night." That afternoon, Victoria arrived with dossiers on 3 potential nannies, all highly qualified and willing to sign confidentiality agreements. Maxwell reviewed their credentials while the twins played in the garden under Mrs. Winters' supervision. "This one has experience with bereaved children," Victoria pointed out, indicating a woman with an impressive resume. "Schedule interviews with all 3, Maxwell decided. "And what about school? They must have been enrolled somewhere in Portland." "I've requested those records," Victoria assured him. "But Maxwell, there's something else we need to discuss." She hesitated. "Jenkins called. The board wants to schedule an emergency session. The rumors are spreading and some of our more conservative investors are getting nervous." Maxwell frowned. "About 2 orphaned children? That's absurd." "It's not about the children themselves," Victoria explained gently. "It's about what they represent, your father's secret life, the question of succession, the Pierce family trust. Jenkins is suggesting that keeping them could be seen as an acknowledgement of impropriety." "My father was a hypocrite," Maxwell said flatly. He built his public image on family values while keeping a second family hidden away. That's the impropriety, Victoria, not my decision about what happens to these children now. I agree, she said. But perception matters in this industry. If you decide to keep them, we need a strategy for announcing it to the board and eventually the public. If I decide to keep them, Maxwell repeated, the words sounding hollow even to his own ears. Could he really send them away now? After Emma had included him in her drawing, after Ethan had shared his father's stories, after they had begun to trust him? The sound of laughter drifted through the open window, Emma chasing a butterfly while Ethan constructed something elaborate, with twigs. For children who had lost so much, they showed remarkable resilience. I need to go to the office tomorrow, Maxwell said abruptly. The Tokyo deal won't finalize itself. Victoria nodded, understanding the evasion for what it was. I'll stay with them. We can interview nannies next week. Thank you, Maxwell said, genuine gratitude in his voice. For everything, Victoria. I don't know how I would be handling this without you. Maxwell's return to Pierce Industries felt like stepping into another life, one that had once been all-consuming but now seemed strangely distant. He moved through meetings mechanically, signed documents, and made decisions with his usual precision, but his thoughts repeatedly drifted to the two small occupants of his home. When he returned that evening, the mansion was unusually quiet. Following the sound of soft music to the library, he discovered Emma sitting cross-legged on the floor, an antique wooden box open before her. Victoria watched from a nearby chair. "What's that?" Maxwell asked, setting down his briefcase. Emma looked up, her eyes bright. "A music box. Victoria found it in one of the cabinets. It plays such pretty music." Maxwell froze, recognition washing over him. The rosewood box with mother-of-pearl inlay had belonged to his mother. After her death, it had disappeared, packed away by his father, along with most traces of Eleanor Pierce. He hadn't seen it in over 30 years. "It was your mother's," Victoria said quietly. "I remembered seeing it years ago when I first started working here." Maxwell knelt beside Emma, a strange tightness in his throat. The box played a delicate melody, Debussy's Clair de Lune, his mother's favorite piece. "My mommy had a music box too," Emma said, carefully touching the edge of the lid. "But it got broken when we moved apartments." "This one is special," Maxwell found himself saying. "My mother used to play it for me before bed." "What was your mommy like?" Emma asked, genuine curiosity in her eyes. Maxwell hesitated. He rarely spoke about Eleanor Pierce. The wound of her loss had been sealed over rather than healed, ignored rather than addressed. His father had discouraged dwelling on the past, insisting they move forward. Maxwell had been sent back to boarding school just 2 weeks after the funeral. "She was kind," he said finally. "She loved music and books. She had a garden where she grew roses." The memories surfaced slowly, like artifacts long buried. "She used to call me her little scientist, because I was always taking things apart to see how they worked." "Like Ethan!" Emma exclaimed. "He's always looking at how things work. He took apart our clock once and put it back together better than before." As if summoned by his name, Ethan appeared in the doorway, drawn by the conversation. He approached cautiously, eyeing the music box. "Did you make that?" he asked Maxwell, studying the mechanism. "No, it was made in Switzerland a long time ago," Maxwell explained, surprising himself with his patience. "See how the cylinder rotates against the metal comb? Each pin strikes a different tooth to create the notes." Ethan nodded, absorbing the information with serious concentration. Your father too. He showed me a pocket watch once with gears inside. He said understanding how things work is important." A memory surfaced of William Pierce saying almost identical words to a young Maxwell, displaying the inner workings of a grandfather clock. For a disorienting moment, Maxwell could see his father not as the remote, demanding figure of his own childhood, but as the man Ethan and Emma had known, someone who took time to explain things, who carved wooden Toys by hand. Mrs. Winters made dinner, Victoria said, breaking the moment. She said to tell you it's getting cold. Dinner was another novel experience, the four of them around the smaller breakfast table, rather than the formal dining room, sharing a meal of roast chicken and vegetables. Maxwell found himself actually participating in conversation rather than checking emails or reviewing reports, as he typically did while eating. I liked having Victoria here today, Emma said, carefully cutting her chicken into small pieces. She showed me how to play chess. She's very good at it, Victoria noted with a smile. Quick to learn the strategies. Dad, your father taught me a little chess, Ethan added, but I like building things better. I was the Pierce Industries chess champion 3 years running, Maxwell said, surprising himself with the disclosure. My father insisted I learn. He said it taught foresight and strategic thinking. Could you teach me more? Ethan asked, a rare display of enthusiasm brightening his features. I suppose I could, Maxwell agreed, feeling strangely gratified by the request. After dinner, as Victoria prepared to leave, she handed Maxwell a folder. The children's school records from Portland. They're both doing well academically, though there are notes about Ethan being withdrawn socially and Emma having some separation anxiety even before their mother's illness. Maxwell nodded, scanning the documents. When should they return to school? Most child psychologists would recommend establishing a routine fairly quickly, Victoria said. But they've experienced significant trauma and upheaval. It might be best to give them a few weeks to adjust before enrolling them in a new school. And the nanny interviews? Scheduled for tomorrow afternoon. I've arranged for them to take place here so the children can meet the candidates. After Victoria left, Maxwell found himself at loose ends. Normally he would retreat to his study to work until late in the evening, but tonight he felt oddly reluctant to return to his usual solitude. Instead, he wandered to the media room, where Ethan and Emma were watching a nature documentary about ocean life, their faces rapt as colorful fish filled the screen. May I join you? Maxwell asked formally. Emma patted the sofa beside her. You can sit here. This is about seahorses. Did you know the daddy seahorses have the babies? I did know that, actually, Maxwell said, lowering himself onto the cushion. They're one of the few species where the male carries the young. As the documentary continued, Emma gradually leaned against his side, her small body warm and trusting. By the program's end, she had fallen asleep, her head resting against his arm. She's tired a lot since Mom died, Ethan observed quietly. The doctors said it's part of grief. Maxwell glanced down at the sleeping child, then at the solemn boy, who seemed to carry an understanding beyond his years. In that moment, something shifted within him, a protective instinct he hadn't known he possessed. I should take her upstairs, he said softly. Carefully, awkwardly, he lifted Emma into his arms. She stirred slightly but didn't wake, nestling her head against his shoulder with complete trust. As he carried her up the grand staircase, followed by a watchful Ethan, Maxwell Pierce, who had built his life around control, predictability, and emotional distance, felt the careful walls he'd constructed beginning to crumble. The Pierce Industries executive boardroom had never felt so hostile. Maxwell sat at the head of the table, maintaining his composed exterior, while Jenkins presented what he called a comprehensive solution to the current situation. As you can all see, Jenkins continued, gesturing to the documents distributed around the table, this arrangement provides generously for the children while ensuring the Pierce name and company remain untarnished by scandal. Maxwell flipped through the meticulously prepared portfolio, boarding school recommendations, trust fund structures, and carefully vetted suitable families willing to take in the twins. Everything necessary to remove Emma and Ethan from his life while maintaining the illusion of responsible care. You've been thorough, Maxwell observed, his voice neutral. When did you prepare all this? Jenkins hesitated briefly. I've had contingency plans in place for some time. Your father requested options should the situation ever become Complicated. Complicated, Maxwell repeated. The words seemed to follow the twins everywhere. His father's relationship with their mother was complicated. His responsibility toward them was complicated. The implications for Pierce Industries were complicated. The children would receive excellent care, Margaret Chen added. The Westridge Academy is one of the finest boarding schools in the country, and the Foster family has impeccable credentials. They're 6 years old, Maxwell said quietly. They just lost their mother. And now you're suggesting we ship them off to strangers and a boarding school? It's not ideal, Jenkins conceded with practiced sympathy, but we must consider what's best for all parties involved, including Pierce Industries and its 10,000 employees who rely on our stability. Maxwell was about to respond when his phone vibrated with a text from Victoria. Emma asking for you. Upset after nanny interview, heading back to the mansion now. We'll continue this discussion later, Maxwell said, rising abruptly. I have a family matter to attend to. Jenkins caught up with him in the hallway. Maxwell, be reasonable. You're not equipped to raise children. Your lifestyle, your responsibilities here. My lifestyle can change, Maxwell replied, surprising himself with the conviction in his voice. Pierce Industries will survive. Your father wouldn't want— My father isn't here, Maxwell cut him off, and from what I'm learning, I'm not sure I know what he would have wanted anymore. At the mansion, he found Victoria in the kitchen with Mrs. Winters. Ethan sat at the counter, methodically taking apart and reassembling a small clock, his face set in concentration. Where's Emma? Maxwell asked. In the garden, Victoria replied. The nanny interview didn't go well. The woman was qualified, but somewhat rigid in her approach. Emma became upset when she mentioned her rules about toys being kept in bedrooms only. Maxwell found Emma sitting on a stone bench beneath an oak tree, button clutched tightly to her chest. I hear the nanny interview was difficult, he said, taking a seat beside her. Emma nodded, not looking up. She said Button couldn't come to breakfast because toys don't belong at the table. I see, Maxwell said carefully. And that upset you? Button isn't just a toy, Emma explained, her voice small but indignant. He's family. Mom said so. Family. The word resonated unexpectedly. Maxwell had always defined family narrowly. Himself and his father, bound more by duty and shared last name than genuine connection. Now this child was expanding the definition to include a well-worn teddy bear. What happened to your mother's music box? Maxwell asked, changing the subject. You said it broke during a move? Emma nodded. We had to leave our house and go to an apartment. Mom said it was more practical, but I think it was because she was sick and couldn't work as much anymore. The music box fell when the movers were carrying boxes. The explanation revealed more about Sarah Miller's financial situation than Emma likely realized. Despite William Pierce's support, they had clearly lived modestly, even frugally. Would you like to have my mother's music box? Maxwell asked impulsively. To keep in your room? Emma's eyes widened. Really? But it was your mom's. I think she would like knowing it was being appreciated, Maxwell said, surprised by how true the words felt. Eleanor Pierce had been gentle, generous, nothing like the driven, often cold man her husband had become after her death. Thank you, Emma said solemnly, as if understanding the significance of the gesture. Then, hesitantly, are you going to send us away? The lady who came today said she would take us to see schools. The directness of the question caught Maxwell off guard. Would that upset you? Going to a good school with other children? I don't want to leave Ethan, she said, clutching Button tighter. And she hesitated, then added in a whisper, I don't want to leave you either. Something tightened in Maxwell's chest, an unfamiliar ache that was both painful and oddly warming. No one in his adult life had ever expressed a desire for his presence, rather than his expertise or influence. The board thinks it might be better for you, he said carefully. They think I don't know how to take care of children. You're learning. Emma said with surprising insight. "Mrs. Winters says you're doing better than she expected." Maxwell couldn't help the small smile that formed. "Does she?" Emma nodded earnestly. "She said you're less prickly now. What does prickly mean?" "It means difficult to get close to," Maxwell explained. "Like a cactus." "You're not a cactus," Emma declared, reaching out to pat his hand reassuringly. "You're more like a pineapple. Spiky on the outside, but sweet inside." Later that evening, after the children had gone to bed, Maxwell and Victoria sat in the study, reviewing the nanny candidates. "None of them seem right," Maxwell admitted. "The first was too rigid, the second barely looked at Ethan, and the third kept calling them poor little orphans when she thought they couldn't hear." "We'll find someone," Victoria assured him. "What about the board meeting? How did Jenkins' presentation go?" Maxwell gestured to the portfolio he'd brought home. "See for yourself. He's been planning this for years. Ways to hide my father's indiscretion, should it ever become public." Victoria scanned the documents, her expression darkening. "This isn't just about protecting the company image, Max. Look at the trust structure. All funds controlled by administrators selected by the board until the twins are 25, and these suitable families are all connected to Major Pierce. Industries, shareholders or partners, what are you suggesting?" "I'm not sure yet," Victoria admitted, "but Jenkins seems unusually invested in removing the twins from your life. I think we should find out why." The weekend brought a rare stretch of uninterrupted time at the mansion. No board meetings, no conference calls, no urgent emails. Just Maxwell and the twins in a house that felt both too large and somehow not large enough for the emotions swirling within its walls. On Saturday morning, Maxwell found himself in his father's study again, methodically going through drawers and cabinets. If William Pierce had kept a secret family for 6 years, what else might he have hidden? The discovery came in the afternoon, behind a false panel in the antique desk, a leather-bound journal Maxwell had never seen before. The handwriting inside was unmistakably his father's, but the contents were nothing like William Pierce's meticulous business notes. September 15th, 2018, Sarah called today. The twins have started kindergarten. Emma is already reading simple books, and Ethan built a bridge out of popsicle sticks that held more weight than any in his class. Pierce intelligence, without a doubt. I wish I could acknowledge them publicly, give them my name, my resources. But the scandal would destroy everything I've built, everything Maxwell will inherit. Maxwell turned the page, his hands unsteady. December 24th, 2018. Spent Christmas Eve in Portland. Brought the wooden train set for Ethan and the dollhouse for Emma. Sarah made her famous gingerbread cookies. For a few hours, I could pretend this was my real life, simple, warm, filled with laughter. Maxwell sent his usual formal holiday message from London. I wonder if he'll ever forgive me for sending him away to school after Eleanor died. I didn't know how to raise a grieving child alone. Perhaps that was my first great failure as a father. Entry after entry, detailed visits to Portland, gifts given, milestones celebrated. William Pierce, the titan of industry, the stern patriarch, had been living a double life, not just of secret indiscretion, but of genuine family connection. June 18th, 2020. Sarah's preliminary diagnosis came today. Cancer. I've arranged for the best oncologists, but she's insisting on keeping treatments manageable so she can be present for the twins. Her strength humbles me. And told Maxwell I couldn't make the Singapore conference due to health concerns. Not entirely a lie. My heart feels physically pained when I think of Emma and Ethan potentially losing their mother. October 3rd, 2020. Had dinner with Maxwell at the Metropolitan Club. He presented the quarterly projections with typical precision. Every time I try to steer our conversation towards something personal, he redirects to business matters. I've created this distance between us, trained him to be my business successor rather than my son. Perhaps it's too late to change that, but I find myself wishing we had what I have with Ethan. The simple joy of building model airplanes together. No agenda, no expectations. Maxwell set the journal down, a strange hollowness expanding in his chest. He'd spent his life trying to meet his father's exacting standards, believing William Pierce valued nothing beyond business success and the Pierce legacy. Now he discovered his father had recognized the emotional void between them, had even regretted it, while continuing to maintain the very barriers that created it. "Mr. Pierce?" Maxwell looked up to find Ethan in the doorway, watching him with those serious grey-blue eyes. "Yes, Ethan?" Mrs. Winters said lunch is ready. The boy hesitated, then added, "That's Dad's special book." Maxwell's attention sharpened. "You know about this?" Ethan nodded, approaching cautiously. "He wrote in it when he visited." Sighed. "Sometimes," Ethan confirmed. "He said you were very smart and important, but that he wished you could come fishing with us once. He thought you worked too hard." The irony of William Pierce, workaholic extraordinaire, thinking anyone worked too hard, might have been amusing in another context. Instead, it felt like a posthumous criticism Maxwell had no way to address. "Why didn't he ever tell me about you and Emma?" Maxwell asked, the question that had haunted him since finding the twins in his car. Ethan shrugged in the artless way of children. "He said it was grown-up complicated, but he told us stories about you, like how you built a robot for your science fair that could solve math problems." "I was 12, Maxwell said, surprised his father had remembered that project, let alone spoken about it. He never came to see it. "He had a picture," Ethan said. "He showed us." During lunch, Maxwell found himself studying the twins with new awareness. Their table manners, their vocabulary, the way they carefully folded their napkins, all reflected deliberate teaching. Sarah Miller might have been a librarian of modest means, but she had raised her children with attention and care. "Did your father visit often?" Maxwell asked, trying to sound casual. "For birthdays and Christmas," Emma said. "And sometimes just because. He always brought presents." "What kind of presents?" Maxwell found himself genuinely curious. "Books for me," Emma said. "And building things for Ethan. And he took us to the Science Museum and the aquarium. He knew all about the fish." Maxwell remembered accompanying his father to that same aquarium as a child, one of the rare outings they'd taken together. William had indeed known all about the various species, delivering impromptu lectures at each exhibit. Maxwell had thought it a typical business efficiency, acquiring knowledge to be dispensed when needed. Now he wondered if his father had simply loved marine biology and had no one to share that interest with except a son he didn't know how to connect with. After lunch, Maxwell returned to the journal, reading entry after entry. The final one was dated just 3 weeks before William Pierce's sudden heart attack, May 2nd, 2024. "Sarah's condition is worsening. The treatments are no longer effective. She started talking about after, making me promise to ensure the twins are cared for. I've updated my will, created trusts, made arrangements with Jenkins. But there's only one solution that feels right, though it's the one Sarah resists most strongly. Maxwell must know about Emma and Ethan. They are his blood, his family. Perhaps they could heal what I've broken between us. Perhaps they could give him what I never could, a reason to value more than just success and control. I'll tell him after the Tokyo merger is complete. No more delays." But William Pierce had never had the chance to make that revelation himself. Instead, a heart attack during his morning workout had silenced him forever, leaving his secrets to emerge in their own time, in their own way. "Victoria," Maxwell said into his phone, "I need you to look into something. Any unusual activity in my father's accounts in the months before his death, specifically interactions with Jenkins that didn't go through the normal corporate channels." "I've actually been digging into that," Victoria replied. "There's something you should see. I'll bring it over this evening." Victoria arrived that evening with a locked security case, the kind used for transporting sensitive corporate documents. The children were already in bed, the mansion quiet except for the steady rain that had begun to fall. "What you're about to see doesn't leave this room," Victoria said, entering the security code to unlock the case. "I had to call in several favors to access these records." She spread the contents across Maxwell's desk. Financial statements, email printouts, and surveillance photos. At the center lay a USB drive. "This contains security footage from your father's private office for the 6 months before his death," Victoria explained. "He had a separate system installed without the board's knowledge, cameras that recorded directly to his personal server." "Why would he do that?" Maxwell asked, though he was beginning to suspect the answer. "I think he didn't trust someone," Victoria said. "Someone close to the company." Maxwell inserted the drive into his laptop. The footage showed various meetings in his father's office, most seemingly routine. Then came a file dated 2 weeks before William Pierce's death. The video showed his father and Jenkins in what appeared to be a heated discussion. The audio was faint, but clear enough. "This is non-negotiable, Richard," William said firmly. "I'm telling Maxwell about the twins after the Tokyo merger. It's time to end this deception." "You're making a mistake," Jenkins replied, his normally smooth demeanor visibly agitated. "Think of the company, the shareholders." "I've thought of nothing but the company for 30 years, William cut him off. "It's cost me my relationship with my son. I won't let it cost me my relationship with Emma and Ethan too. And the arrangements we discussed," Jenkins pressed. "The succession plan will need to be reconsidered," William said. "Maxwell deserves to know everything before those decisions are finalized." The video ended, leaving Maxwell staring at the frozen image of his father's resolute face. "There's more," Victoria said, quietly, handing him a folder. "Financial records showing Jenkins has been systematically transferring small amounts from various Pierce family trusts into offshore accounts for years. Not enough to raise immediate flags, but substantial over time. He's been embezzling," Maxwell realized, flipping through the documents. "That's not all," Victoria continued. "I found communication between Jenkins and the hospital in Portland where Sarah Miller was treated. He was getting regular updates on her condition for months before her death." Maxwell looked up sharply. "He was monitoring her illness?" Victoria nodded grimly. "And this is what concerns me most." She slid forward a final document, an email from Jenkins to an unlisted recipient, dated 3 days after William Pierce's death. "A contact made with SM have confirmed WP deceased before revelation. Children will be delivered to intended location within 30 days as contingency plan dictates. Succession plan proceeding as discussed." "He orchestrated it," Maxwell said, the pieces falling into place with sickening clarity. "Jenkins made sure the twins came to me after my father died, but before he could tell me about them himself." "I think so," Victoria agreed. "But why? If he was trying to hide their existence..." "He wasn't hiding them," Maxwell realized. "He was using them, creating a scandal he could control. Look at how quickly he had those placement plans ready, how eager he's been to remove them from my life." Maxwell pulled out the succession documents Jenkins had presented to the board. "The Pierce Family Trust controls the majority voting shares of Pierce Industries. As the only known Pierce heir, those shares would transfer to me upon my father's death. But look at this clause." He pointed to a subsection of the trust provisions. "In the event of scandal or impropriety involving the Pierce name that threatens company stability, trust management reverts to the executive board until such time as stability is restored." "And as chief legal counsel, Jenkins effectively controls the board." Victoria finished the thought. "He needed the twins to create a scandal, but didn't want them staying with you long enough to become a real family. That's why he's pushing." "So hard for boarding school and foster placement," Maxwell said, anger building as the full scope of the manipulation became clear. "He doesn't care about the twins or the company image. He wants control of Pierce Industries." "There's one more thing," Victoria said hesitantly. "The most recent board communication. Jenkins has called for an emergency vote tomorrow to invoke the trust provision, citing ongoing family instability that threatens investor confidence. He's making his move," Maxwell said, "before we can expose him." "What are you going to do?" Maxwell stared at the evidence before him. Proof of his father's intentions, Jenkins' betrayal, and a scheme years in the making. "First we secure this evidence, then we prepare for tomorrow's board meeting." His jaw set with determination. "Jenkins thinks he's using Emma and Ethan to take control of Pierce Industries. He's about to learn that he's picked the wrong family. To manipulate." Later that night, unable to sleep, Maxwell found himself checking on the twins. Both slept peacefully, unaware of the corporate machinations surrounding their young lives. Ethan had kicked off his covers, and Maxwell carefully pulled them back over the boy's shoulders. In Emma's room, he found her curled around Button. His mother's music box on the nightstand beside her bed. These children had already lost so much: their mother, the man they knew as their father, their home in Portland. Now Jenkins was trying to use them as pawns in a ruthless corporate takeover. Maxwell Pierce had built his reputation on being a shrewd, calculating businessman who never let emotion cloud his judgment. But standing in the doorway of Emma's room, watching the gentle rise and fall of her breathing, he felt something unfamiliar and powerful taking hold, a fierce, protective resolve that transcended business strategy. For the first time in his life, Maxwell Pierce was ready to fight not for Pierce Industries, but for family. Dawn found Maxwell and Victoria in his home office, surrounded by legal documents, financial records, and empty coffee cups. They had worked through the night, building their case against Jenkins piece by meticulous piece. "The trust documents are our strongest evidence," Maxwell said, highlighting a section on his tablet. "My father amended the family trust 6 years ago, right after the twins were born." Victoria leaned in to examine the passage. "He added provisions for all biological children of William Pierce without specifically naming them." "Exactly," Maxwell nodded. "Jenkins helped draft these amendments, but conveniently failed to mention them when presenting his solution to the board. Because the amendments legally recognize Emma and Ethan as Pierce heirs," Victoria realized, "they're entitled to protection under the family trust, not removal from it, which means Jenkins has been actively working against my father's documented wishes," Maxwell concluded, a cold anger hardening his voice. "He's not protecting Pierce Industries from scandal. He's creating one to seize control." A soft knock interrupted their strategy session. Mrs. Winters stood in the doorway, concern evident in her expression. "The children are awake, sir," she said. "They're asking for you. I think they sense something's wrong." Maxwell glanced at his watch, surprised to find it was already past 8. "Tell them I'll be right there," he said, then turned to Victoria. "We need Lisa Chen from legal and Derek Washington from finance. They've both had run-ins with Jenkins over the years. They'll back us if the evidence is solid." "I'll contact them immediately," Victoria agreed. "The board meeting is at 2. That gives us 5 hours to prepare." In the kitchen, Maxwell found Emma and Ethan picking at their breakfast, subdued compared to their usual morning chatter. "Are you sending us away today?" Emma asked without preamble, her grey-blue eyes serious. Maxwell froze. "Why would you think that?" "We heard Mrs. Winters talking on the phone," Ethan explained. "She said there was a situation about us." Maxwell sat down between them, choosing his words carefully. "There is a situation, but it's not what you think. Do you remember Mr. Jenkins? The man in the suit who came to visit last week?" Both children nodded, expression solemn. "Mr. Jenkins wants to make some changes that I don't agree with," Maxwell explained. "Today I have an important meeting to make sure those changes don't happen." "Is he a bad man?" Emma asked. Maxwell considered the question. "He's made some bad choices," he said finally. "He's tried to take something that doesn't belong to him." "Like stealing?" Ethan asked, his analytical mind quickly grasping the concept. "Something Like that, Maxwell agreed, but I'm going to stop him. How? Emma wanted to know. Maxwell found himself explaining corporate governance and trust provisions in simplified terms, surprised by the children's attentive focus. Ethan particularly seemed to grasp the fundamentals with remarkable clarity for a 6-year-old. So we're part of the family trust too, he asked. Because we're Pierces? Yes, Maxwell confirmed. My father made sure of that. He said we were Pierces even without the name, Emma added. He said it was in our blood. A memory surfaced. William Pierce telling a teenage Maxwell that being a Pierce meant more than the name on a building. It meant responsibility, integrity, vision. At the time, Maxwell had interpreted it as another lecture on maintaining the family business legacy. Now he wondered if his father had been trying to communicate something more fundamental about family itself. As Maxwell prepared to leave for the office, Ethan approached with a piece of paper. I made this for your meeting, he said, handing over a carefully drawn diagram. Maxwell recognized it immediately, a simplified organizational chart of Pierce Industries' leadership structure, with lines clearly showing reporting relationships. This is very accurate, Maxwell said, genuinely impressed. How did you know all this? From the big book in Grandfather's study, Ethan explained. The one with the company history. I've been reading it. You're really good at understanding. Systems, Maxwell observed, studying the diagram with new appreciation. Ethan nodded seriously. Grandfather, said I have an engineer's mind. Like you. Emma appeared with her contribution. A drawing of Maxwell, standing tall in a suit, with what appeared to be Jenkins as a much smaller figure beside him. This is you winning, she explained. Thank you, Maxwell said, carefully placing both children's offerings in his briefcase. The simple gesture felt unexpectedly significant. Before leaving, Maxwell made one more crucial call to Harrison Wells, his father's oldest friend and a retired judge, who still held considerable influence in corporate circles. It's about time. You called, son, Wells said when Maxwell explained the situation. I've been watching Jenkins maneuver since William's funeral. Never trusted the man myself. I need your support at the board meeting, Maxwell said. Your perspective on my father's intentions regarding Emma and Ethan. You'll have it, Wells promised. William talked to me about those children, you know. Proudest I'd seen him in years when he showed me pictures of Ethan's science project. Always meant to bring the families together, just ran out of time. As Maxwell headed to Pierce Tower, Victoria beside him reviewing final preparations, he found his thoughts unusually clear. Throughout his career, he'd approached business challenges with calculated precision, weighing options and outcomes with emotional detachment. Today felt different. Today the stakes weren't quarterly projections or market share. They were two children who had lost everything and were looking to him for security and belonging. We've built a solid case, Victoria said, reviewing their strategy one final time. The financial evidence alone should be enough to remove Jenkins from the board. But will it be enough to convince them the twins belong with me? Maxwell asked, voicing the question that had been growing in his mind throughout the morning's preparations. Victoria studied him thoughtfully. You've changed, Max. A week ago you were ready to call security when you found them in your car. Now you're fighting to keep them. They're Pierces, Maxwell said simply, but he knew it was more than that. Somewhere between Emma's nightmares and Ethan's serious observations, between Button the teddy bear and his mother's music box, between pancake breakfasts and bedtime stories, these children had become more than an obligation or a bloodline connection. They had become his family. The board meeting had been brutal but decisive. Jenkins had walked in confident, armed with legal documents and practiced sympathy. He'd walked out ashen-faced, stripped of his position as chief legal counsel, pending a full investigation into financial improprieties. The evidence Maxwell and Victoria had presented, the surveillance footage, the financial trails, the trust amendments, had been irrefutable. The look on his face when Judge Wells confirmed your father's intentions regarding the twins, Victoria said, as they drove back to the mansion. I don't think Jenkins ever imagined William would have confided in anyone else. He underestimated my father, Maxwell replied, and he underestimated me. But the victory felt incomplete. While the board had unanimously voted to remove Jenkins, they had remained non-committal about the twins' long-term status. We'll need time to review all legal and public relations implications, Margaret Chen had said carefully. Another meeting was scheduled for the following afternoon, a final determination on the Pierce family matter. That evening, as rain lashed against the windows and thunder rumbled in the distance, Maxwell found himself in the mansion's rarely used library. Emma and Ethan sat on the floor, surrounded by old photo albums Mrs. Winters had unearthed from storage. Visual archives of Pierce family history going back 3 generations. "Is that you?" Emma asked, pointing to a photo of a solemn boy with a science fair ribbon. "Yes, I was about 10 there," Maxwell confirmed, sitting cross-legged on the carpet beside them, a position that would have been unthinkable 2 weeks ago. "You look like Ethan," she observed, "same serious face." Maxwell studied the photograph with fresh eyes. The resemblance was indeed striking, the same thoughtful gaze, the same careful posture. Not just the Pierce blue-gray eyes, but something in the expression itself. "What was your science project?" Ethan asked, genuinely interested. "A solar-powered water filtration system," Maxwell recalled. "My father thought it was impractical, too slow to be commercially viable." "But you won anyway," Emma pointed out, touching the ribbon in the photo. "Yes," Maxwell said, a memory surfacing. "My mother came to the fair. She said not everything valuable had to be commercial." The recollection surprised him. He'd buried so many memories of Eleanor Pierce after her death, following his father's example of moving forward rather than looking back. "Our mum said similar things," Ethan said quietly. "That the best things can't be bought." Maxwell turned another page in the album and paused at a family portrait, himself at age 6, almost exactly the twins' age, posed stiffly between his parents. His father looked severe even then, while his mother's smile seemed to hold the family together. "You were our age," Emma observed, touching the photograph gently. "Yes," Maxwell said. "Just about." "Were you happy?" she asked, with the direct simplicity of children. Maxwell considered the question honestly. "Sometimes. My father was often busy, but my mother made things special. She would read to me every night, even books she thought were silly because I liked them." "Like Button Bear Adventures?" Emma asked, referring to the children's book Victoria had brought her, which had quickly become a bedtime favorite. "Similar." Maxwell smiled. "I liked stories about a detective mouse who solved crimes in a big city." "Our mom read to us every night too," Ethan said. "Even when she was really sick. She said stories help you dream better." Maxwell felt something tighten in his throat. These connections, these shared experiences across different childhoods, felt significant in ways he couldn't fully articulate. "Did you win your meeting today?" Emma asked, changing the subject as she often did when emotions threatened to overwhelm her. "In a way," Maxwell said carefully. "Mr. Jenkins won't be causing problems anymore. But tomorrow there's another important meeting about—" he hesitated, "about us, about our family." "Are they still trying to send us away?" Ethan asked perceptively. "Some people think that might be easier," Maxwell acknowledged. "They think I don't know how to be a proper guardian for you." "But you're learning," Emma said earnestly. "You remembered the nightlight last night, and you didn't put pickles in my sandwich even though Mrs. Winters wasn't here. Such simple milestones of care," Maxwell thought. Things most people would take for granted. But that represented significant evolution for someone who had lived his entire adult life focused solely on himself and his business. "What happens if they say we can't stay?" Ethan asked, the practical one as always. Maxwell had been considering this question all afternoon. "Then we'll figure something out," he said with newfound conviction. "Because we're family now." Later, after the children had gone to bed, Maxwell returned to his father's study. He opened the safe behind the landscape painting, a hiding place only he and William had known about, and removed an object he hadn't looked at in years, his father's pocket watch, a Pierce family heirloom passed down through generations. The heavy gold timepiece had always symbolized the Pierce legacy to Maxwell, the business empire, the reputation, the responsibility. Now, turning it over in his hand, he saw it differently. This watch had marked time through generations of Pierce, family moments, births, deaths, triumphs, failures. It had ticked away seconds as his father built a business, as Maxwell grew up, as Emma and Ethan came into the world unknown to him. His phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Final preparations complete for tomorrow. Chen is on board. Washington." And Michael's confirmed supporting votes. "We're ready." Tomorrow would determine everything: his relationship with the twins, the future of Pierce Industries, his own identity as a Pierce. For the first time in his adult life, Maxwell found himself prioritizing family over business, relationship over empire. He placed the pocket watch carefully in his suit jacket, the one he would wear to tomorrow's meeting. Whatever happened, he would face it as a Pierce, with all the history and responsibility that entailed, but also, he hoped, with something his father had only found late in life: the understanding that legacy isn't measured in buildings or stock prices, but in the connections we forge and the love we nurture. As if summoned by his thoughts, a small voice called from the hallway. "Maxwell?" Emma stood in the doorway, button clutched to her chest, her eyes wide in the dim light. "Another nightmare?" he asked gently. She nodded. "Can you tell me a story? Mum always said stories help chase the bad dreams away." "Come on," Maxwell said, rising to guide her back to bed. "I think I remember those detective mouse stories after all." The Pierce Industries boardroom felt different today. Maxwell stood at the window, watching the city below, while board members filed in for the emergency session. His father's pocket watch weighed reassuringly in his suit pocket, a tangible connection to generations of Pierces who had faced their own defining moments. Victoria entered last, giving him a subtle nod. Everything was in place. "Ladies and gentlemen," Maxwell began, taking his position at the head of the table. "Yesterday we addressed the breach of trust committed by Richard Jenkins. Today, we need to resolve the matter of Emma and Ethan Miller, my father's biological children and my half-siblings." He placed a folder on the table. "You've all received copies of the relevant trust documents, including the amendments my father made 6 years ago to include all biological children of William Pierce as beneficiaries. These documents make it clear that Emma and Ethan are legally entitled to the Pierce name and protection." Margaret Chen, head of public relations, leaned forward. "The legal status isn't in question, Maxwell. Our concern is the public perception. Pierce Industries has built its reputation on family values and integrity. The revelation that William Pierce maintained a secret relationship and fathered children outside of marriage will be problematic." "I appreciate your concern, Margaret," Maxwell replied evenly, "but we're not here to protect my father's reputation. We're here to honor his wishes and fulfill our legal and moral obligations to 2 children who have lost both parents." "And who would raise these children?" asked Robert Michaels, the eldest board member who had served alongside William Pierce for decades. "You've built an impressive career, Maxwell, but child-rearing requires very different skills than running a technology company." "I would," Maxwell said simply. "I am their legal guardian, their closest living relative, and I intend to raise them myself." A murmur circled the table. Maxwell Pierce, known for 16-hour workdays, international business trips, and a notoriously strict management style, raising 6-year-old twins. It seemed inconceivable. "Maxwell," Derek Washington said carefully, "with all due respect, your lifestyle isn't exactly conducive to childcare. The demands of your position can be adjusted," Maxwell finished firmly. "I've already begun restructuring my schedule and responsibilities. Victoria has agreed to take on additional operational oversight as COO, a promotion that's long overdue. Victoria nodded from her seat, calm and professional as always, though Maxwell could see the subtle pride in her expression at the public acknowledgement of her capabilities. Furthermore, Maxwell continued, I'm establishing a family foundation in Sarah Miller's name to support single parents battling terminal illness. This foundation will create something positive from this situation while honoring the twins' mother. He paused, letting his words sink in. Pierce Industries has always claimed to value family above all. Now we have the opportunity to demonstrate that value in action rather than just advertising campaigns. The board members exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of surprise and uncertainty. This was not the Maxwell Pierce they knew, the ruthless, efficiency-focused CEO who prioritized quarterly results above all else. There's something else you should know, a voice said from the doorway. Jenkins stood there, his normally impeccable appearance slightly disheveled, his expression hard. Jenkins, you're not authorized to be here, Washington began, but Jenkins cut him off. Before you make your decision, the board should know the full truth about Sarah Miller, he said, his voice tight with desperation. She was a gold digger who trapped William Pierce into supporting her and her children. She threatened to expose him if he didn't pay up. Maxwell felt a cold fury rising within him. That's a lie, is it? Jenkins challenged. She was a nobody, a librarian from Portland who somehow entangled one of the wealthiest men in the country. She got exactly what she wanted, money, security, and now her children getting the Pierce name and fortune. Sarah Miller refused additional money beyond basic support and education trusts, Maxwell countered, his voice deadly quiet. She declined William's offer to buy her a house, choosing to rent an apartment instead. When she became ill, she initially refused his offers to pay. For experimental treatments, he reached into his pocket and removed a small envelope. This arrived by courier this morning from Sarah Miller's attorney in Portland. He opened it carefully and removed a faded photograph. This is Sarah, at 19, at a literacy fundraiser. In Portland, she's receiving an award for creating a reading program for disadvantaged children. The man presenting the award, the chair of the foundation that year, was William Pierce. Maxwell placed the photo on the table where all could see it. They met because of their shared commitment to children's literacy. Their relationship wasn't a scandal or a mistake. It was complex, genuine, and lasted 15 years. He looked directly at Jenkins. You knew this. You were the one who tried to use the children to seize control of Pierce Industries, manipulating the timing of their arrival, creating a controlled scandal, planning to invoke trust provisions to transfer voting rights to the board where you held significant influence. Jenkins' face had gone pale. You can't prove. We already did. Yesterday. Maxwell cut him off. Which is why you're no longer chief legal counsel and why the authorities are currently reviewing evidence of your financial improprieties. He turned back to the board. Jenkins gambled that I would reject these children, that I would see them as threats or inconveniences rather than family. He assumed I was so much my father's son that I would choose Pierce Industries over flesh and blood. Maxwell drew his father's pocket watch from his suit pocket, placing it on the table beside the photograph. My father made that choice for decades, and it cost him dearly. In his final years, he found something with Emma and Ethan that he and I had lost. Genuine family connection. He planned to tell me about them, to unite our family, but he ran out of time. He looked around the table, meeting each board member's eyes in turn. I don't intend to make the same mistake. I am a Pierce. Emma and Ethan are Pierces. I will raise them as my family while continuing to lead this company with the same commitment and vision my father instilled in me. But I will not sacrifice. One for the other. The boardroom fell silent as his words hung in the air. Finally, Robert Michaels, who had known William Pierce longer than anyone, spoke up. I knew William for 40 years, he said quietly. He built this company with singular focus and determination, but in his final years, I saw a change in him, a softening. I didn't understand it then. The old man nodded thoughtfully. I think he'd be proud of your decision, Maxwell. More than any business success, I think he'd be proud to see you choose family. One by one, the board members voiced their support. Some enthusiastically, others with practical reservations, but acceptance of Maxwell's decision. Only Jenkins remained opposed, his influence now diminished to irrelevance. As the meeting concluded, Maxwell returned the pocket watch to his suit pocket, its weight now feeling less like a burden of legacy and more like a connection to something enduring. The battle was won. Emma and Ethan would remain with him, officially recognized as Pierces, their future secure. Now came the more challenging part, becoming the family his father had hoped they could be. The atrium of Pierce Tower buzzed with anticipation. Journalists from major business publications, local news outlets, and technology blogs filled the seats arranged before the small stage. Security personnel maintained a watchful presence, ensuring the assembled press remained orderly. In a private room adjacent to the atrium, Maxwell adjusted his tie one final time. Emma and Ethan sat on a leather sofa nearby, dressed in new clothes selected for the occasion. Emma in a blue dress that matched her eyes, Ethan in a small suit that made him look remarkably like a miniature version of Maxwell himself. "Remember," Maxwell said gently, kneeling before them, "you don't have to say anything if you don't want to. Just stay beside me." "What if they ask us questions?" Ethan worried, his analytical mind always considering contingencies. "They won't," Maxwell assured him. "I've made that very clear. They're here to listen, not to interrogate." Emma clutched Button, who was sporting a new bow tie for the occasion. "Can Button come too?" "Of course," Maxwell smiled. "He's family too." Victoria entered, tablet in hand. "We're ready when you are. The adoption papers are on display as requested, along with the Family Foundation Charter." Maxwell nodded, taking a deep breath. This press conference had been Margaret Chen's idea, a controlled narrative rather than allowing speculation and rumor to define the situation. "A Pierce addresses challenges directly," she had advised, channeling William Pierce's own philosophy. "Are you nervous?" Victoria asked quietly as the children examined a bowl of mints on the coffee table. "Oddly, no," Maxwell replied. "For the first time in my career, I'm absolutely certain I'm doing the right thing." Victoria smiled, squeezing his arm briefly. "It suits you." Certainty. Maxwell glanced at his watch, his father's pocket watch, now carried not just as a symbol of Pierce Industries, but as a connection to a family legacy being redefined with each passing day. "It's time," he said. As they walked onto the stage, camera flashes erupted. Maxwell stepped to the podium, the twins standing slightly behind him, their small faces solemn but composed. Victoria positioned herself protectively at their side. "Good morning," Maxwell began. "Thank you for coming. I've called this press conference to address recent developments regarding the Pierce family and Pierce Industries." He looked out at the sea of expectant faces, journalists poised to record every word. In the past, such scrutiny would have been about product launches or acquisition announcements. Today, it was about something far more personal. 3 weeks ago, I discovered that my late father, William Pierce, had fathered twins during a long-term relationship with Sarah Miller, a children's literacy advocate from Portland. Sarah Miller passed away recently after a long battle with cancer. Following her passing, and in accordance with both parents' wishes, Emma and Ethan have come to live with me as their legal guardian and half-brother. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Maxwell continued steadily. "I'm here today to publicly acknowledge Emma and Ethan as members of the Pierce family. Legal adoption proceedings have begun to formally grant them the Pierce name, though they are already beneficiaries of the Pierce Family Trust as provided for by my father." He gestured to the display beside the podium, where the formal adoption petition was exhibited alongside family photographs. William Pierce, with the twins on various occasions, carefully kept from public view until now. I am also announcing the establishment of the Sarah Miller Foundation for Family Support, which will assist single parents facing terminal illness with both medical expenses and childcare resources. This foundation will ensure that Sarah's compassionate spirit and dedication to children continues to make a positive difference. A reporter called out, "Mr. Pierce, how will this affect your leadership of Pierce Industries?" "Pierce Industries has always been a family company," Maxwell answered. "That hasn't changed. What has changed is my understanding of what family truly means." He glanced back at Emma and Ethan, who were watching him with quiet attention. "I will continue to lead Pierce Industries with the same commitment to excellence and innovation. I've appointed Victoria Chen as Chief Operating Officer to strengthen our executive leadership team as we enter this new chapter." Another journalist raised her hand. "What about Richard Jenkins? Reports indicate he's under investigation for financial improprieties." "Mr. Jenkins is no longer associated with Pierce Industries," Maxwell stated firmly. "The board has appointed Jessica Rivera as our new chief legal counsel. Beyond that, I cannot comment on ongoing legal matters." He paused, then continued with a strength of conviction that surprised even himself. "I would like to address one thing directly. There has been speculation about the nature of my father's relationship with Sarah Miller. Their relationship was private, but genuine, lasting 15 years. It was not a scandal to be hidden away, but a part of his life he valued deeply." Maxwell gestured for Emma and Ethan to join him at the podium. With slight hesitation, they stepped forward, Ethan standing straight-backed and serious, Emma holding Button close. Emma and Ethan have experienced profound loss and change in their young lives. They have shown remarkable courage and resilience. They are Pierces in every way that matters, not just by blood, but by character. He placed a hand gently on each child's shoulder. "As their guardian and brother, I ask that you respect their privacy during this transition. They are children, not public figures, and their well-being is my highest priority." As the press conference concluded, Victoria stepped forward with a final announcement. "The Pierce family would like to thank you for your attendance. Please note that all proceeds from the upcoming Pierce Industries Charity Gala will benefit the newly established Sarah Miller Foundation." Later, as they left Pierce Tower through the private exit, Emma looked up at Maxwell. "Did we do okay?" "You were perfect," he assured her. "Both of you." "What happens now?" Ethan asked, practical as always. Maxwell smiled, feeling a weight lifted that he hadn't realized he'd been carrying. "Now we go home." Home. The word had never held such meaning for him before. The mansion had always been a residence, an impressive address, a suitable setting for the CEO of Pierce Industries. Now, with children's books scattered among business journals and teddy bears perched on designer furniture, it was becoming something else entirely. As they drove away from Pierce Tower, Maxwell glanced at the twins in the rear-view mirror. They were whispering together, some private sibling communication that he wasn't part of. He realized with sudden clarity that while he had been focused on giving them a home, they had given him something equally valuable: a family. For the first time in decades, Maxwell Pierce was not defined solely by the company that bore his name. He was a brother, a guardian, a part of something both smaller and infinitely larger than Pierce Industries. Autumn leaves swirled around their feet as Maxwell, Emma, and Ethan made their way through Portland Memorial Gardens. It had been 2 months since the press conference, 6 weeks since the adoption papers were finalized, and 3 days since Emma and Ethan had asked to visit their mother's grave. Emma carried a small bouquet of yellow daisies, Sarah's favorite, she had explained. Ethan walked solemnly beside Maxwell, their matching grey coats and serious expressions marking them unmistakably as family. "It's there," Emma said softly, pointing to a simple headstone beneath a maple tree. Sarah Elizabeth Miller, the inscription read, followed by dates that encompassed too few years, and the words, beloved mother, daughter, friend. Maxwell stood back slightly, giving the children space for this private moment. Emma carefully arranged the daisies in the small vase built into the headstone, while Ethan straightened a small pinwheel someone had placed there previously. "We're okay, Mom," Emma said, addressing the grave with the straightforward manner of children. "Just like you said we would be. We live in a big house now," Ethan added. "And I'm building a robot for the science fair." Maxwell watched as the twins continued their one-sided conversation, updating their mother on everything from Button's new bow tie to their new school. There was sadness in their voices, but also a resilience that continually amazed him, their ability to absorb tremendous loss and change while still moving forward. "Maxwell is teaching me chess," Ethan was saying, "and he doesn't let me win just because I'm a kid. And he reads Button Bear Adventures every night, even the voices," Emma added. "Not as good as you did, but he's learning." Maxwell felt a lump form in his throat. He had never met Sarah Miller, yet her influence surrounded him daily, in the children's manners, their compassion, their curious minds. She had given them a foundation of love and security that had helped them weather unimaginable changes. After a while, the twins stepped back from the grave. Emma slipped her small hand into Maxwell's. "Mom would like you," she said with certainty. "You're not as funny as she was, but you try hard." Maxwell smiled, squeezing her hand gently. "I wish I could have met her." "She knew about you," Ethan said. "She had a picture from a magazine. She said you looked smart but too serious, like you forgot how to play." Maxwell laughed softly. She wasn't wrong. On the drive back to the hotel, Maxwell's phone rang. Victoria's name appeared on the car's display. "How did it go?" she asked when he answered. "Well, I think," Maxwell replied, glancing at the twins in the rearview mirror. They were absorbed in a game on the tablet they shared. "We're heading back. And to the hotel now. How are things there?" "The renovation plans are finalized," Victoria reported. "Construction begins Monday. I've arranged for the East Wing to remain undisturbed so the children won't be too disrupted during the work." The renovation had been Maxwell's idea, transforming parts of the mansion from a showplace designed to impress business associates into a true family home. The formal dining room would become a combined kitchen and eating area with a large farmhouse table. 2 guest suites would be converted into proper children's bedrooms with adjoining playroom. The rarely used conservatory would become a light-filled study space for homework and projects. "And the foundation paperwork?" Maxwell asked. "All filed. The Sarah Miller Foundation for Family Support is officially operational. We've already received matching grant offers from 3 major corporations." "Good," Maxwell said, genuine satisfaction in his voice. "Have the first assistance packages ready to distribute next month." After checking into their hotel suite, a far cry from the austere business accommodations Maxwell used to prefer, with its bright colors and bunk beds in the children's room, they ordered room service for dinner. The formality of Maxwell's previous life continued to give way to practical considerations. Restaurant dining with 6-year-olds, he had quickly learned, was an unpredictable adventure, best reserved for special occasions. As they ate around the small table by the window overlooking the city lights, Emma announced, "I think I'm ready to call you Brother Maxwell now instead of just Maxwell." Maxwell paused, his fork halfway to his mouth. "Oh?" She nodded decisively. "You've been practicing long enough. You're pretty good at being a brother now." "High praise," Maxwell said, oddly touched by this simple declaration. "Thank you. I've been calling you Brother Maxwell in my head already," Ethan admitted, "since the day you taught me how your father's watch works." After dinner, as the twins prepared for bed, Maxwell found himself standing at the window, reflecting on The swift, profound changes of the past months. Pierce Industries continued to thrive under his leadership, with Victoria's increased operational role allowing him to maintain a more balanced schedule. The board had adjusted to the new family situation, particularly as the positive press from the Sarah Miller Foundation generated goodwill among shareholders and customers alike. Jenkins was facing charges for embezzlement and corporate espionage. His scheme to control Pierce Industries through manipulating the family trust thoroughly dismantled. The man who had been his father's closest advisor and Maxwell's longtime colleague would likely serve prison time, a reminder of how easily power and ambition could corrupt. But the most significant changes had occurred within the walls of what was now truly his home. Children's laughter echoed through formerly silent halls. Weekly family movie nights had replaced solitary evenings reviewing reports. Maxwell's pristine Ferrari now contained 2 booster seats in the back, used for special weekend drives that never failed to delight the twins. And perhaps most surprisingly, Maxwell had discovered aspects of himself long buried under years of corporate focus. Patience he didn't know he possessed. Genuine joy in simple achievements like Ethan mastering a difficult chess move or Emma reading a chapter book independently. His phone buzzed with a message from Victoria. Confirmed dinner next Friday after the children's school presentation. Looking forward to it. Maxwell smiled. That relationship too was evolving in unexpected ways. Victoria had always been his most trusted colleague, but recently their after-hours strategy discussions had begun to feel less like work and more like something he looked forward to for entirely different reasons. "Brother Maxwell," Emma called from the children's room, "we're ready for our story." "Coming," he replied, pocketing his phone. As he settled into the chair between their beds, Button Bear Adventures volume in hand, Maxwell Pierce, once known only for ruthless business efficiency and unwavering focus on Pierce Industries, felt a contentment he had never imagined possible. Not perfect, not without challenges, but genuine and deeply satisfying. His father had ultimately been right. Family was the most important legacy of all. 6 months after the press conference, the grand ballroom of the Metropolitan Hotel glittered with lights and conversation as Portland's business and philanthropic elite gathered for the inaugural gala of the Sarah Miller Foundation. At the center of it all stood Maxwell Pierce, looking both familiar and transformed in his perfectly tailored tuxedo, his customary, serious expression occasionally breaking into genuine smiles as he guided Emma and Ethan through their first formal event. The twins had insisted on attending, despite Maxwell's concerns about the late hour and overwhelming environment. "It's Mom's foundation," Emma had said with the simple logic of children. "We should be there." Now they moved through the crowd with surprising poise. Emma in a midnight blue dress that matched her brother's bow tie, Ethan carefully balancing a plate of approved hors d'oeuvres they could sample. "They're handling this remarkably well," Victoria observed, appearing at Maxwell's side in an elegant emerald gown. As both COO of Pierce Industries and board chair of the foundation, she'd been instrumental in organizing the evening. "They've had practice with change," Maxwell replied, watching as Ethan solemnly shook hands with the mayor. "More than any child should need." The renovation of the mansion had been completed a month earlier, transforming the austere showplace into a genuine family home. The twins' bedrooms now featured ceiling constellations that glowed at night, built-in bookshelves filled with stories, and work areas designed for young creators. The formal parlor had become a family room with comfortable seating and games. Even Maxwell's study had evolved, with a small desk added for Ethan, who liked to work just like Brother Maxwell, and a reading nook for Emma. Mr. Pierce called Margaret Chen, approaching with a journalist in tow. Portland Life magazine would like a statement about the foundation's first 6 months. Maxwell nodded, his public relations instincts automatically engaging. "The Sarah Miller Foundation has already provided support to 27 families. facing terminal illness, helping with everything from medical expenses to childcare resources to housing stability. Sarah believed that no child should lose the security of home while also losing a parent. We're honoring that belief through action. The journalist seemed impressed. And the personal connection. This foundation is named after your father's. Sarah Miller was a remarkable woman who raised two extraordinary children under difficult circumstances. Maxwell interrupted smoothly. Her compassion and resilience live on not just in Emma and Ethan, but in every family the foundation helps. It was the polished answer he'd given a dozen times already that evening, deftly acknowledging Sarah without inviting deeper scrutiny of the relationship that had once been hidden. The personal remained personal, a boundary he maintained firmly for the twins' sake. As the journalist moved on, Maxwell caught sight of Judge Harrison Wells, his father's old friend, deep in conversation with Ethan near the display of foundation achievements. "He's explaining the justice system," Victoria said, following Maxwell's gaze. Ethan asked about Jenkins' sentencing last week. The former chief legal counsel had received 8 years for embezzlement and corporate fraud, a fact that had necessitated careful conversations with the twins about why someone their grandfather had trusted had done something so wrong. 8 years is a long time when you're 6, Maxwell mused. To them, it might as well be forever. They're resilient, Victoria reminded him, and they have stability now. Stability had been Maxwell's primary focus these past months, establishing routines, creating a secure environment, ensuring the twins knew what to expect each day. The company had adjusted to his new schedule, in the office by 8 after dropping the twins at school, home by 6 most evenings, and no weekend work, except during true emergencies. The world had not collapsed, as the old Maxwell might have feared. Instead, Pierce Industries continued to thrive, with Victoria's operational leadership complementing his strategic vision. "It's time for your speech," Victoria reminded him, nodding toward the stage where the program was about to begin. Maxwell gathered the twins, who took their places at a front table with Mrs. Winters, now officially the children's nanny, though she preferred the term household manager. On stage, Maxwell adjusted the microphone and surveyed the crowded ballroom. "Good evening. Thank you all for supporting the Sarah Miller Foundation's mission to assist families facing terminal illness." He spoke about the Foundation's accomplishments, its goals for the coming year, and the partnerships formed with hospitals and social service agencies. Then his tone shifted slightly. "I never had the privilege of meeting Sarah Miller, but I see her influence every day in her children, in Emma's compassion and Ethan's thoughtful nature, in their resilience and curiosity about the world. Before Sarah passed away, she told Emma and Ethan that the measure of a life well lived isn't in professional achievements or accumulation of wealth, but in the love we share and the difference we make in others' lives." Maxwell paused, his gaze finding the twins in the audience. "It's a lesson I'm still learning. For many years I defined success solely through business accomplishments. The Pierce legacy, I believed, was measured in market share and innovation patents." He removed his father's pocket watch from his vest, holding it where the audience could see its gleaming gold surface catching the light. "This watch has been passed down through generations of Pierce men. My father carried it every day, as his father did before him. To me, it always symbolized the weight of responsibility, the pressure to build and maintain the family business legacy." Maxwell's expression softened. "Now I understand that legacy differently. Yes, Pierce Industries matters. The work we do there impacts thousands of lives, but the true Pierce legacy isn't built in boardrooms. It's built at bedtime stories and breakfast tables, in chess lessons and science fair projects, in showing up when we're needed and being present for those who depend on us." He returned the watch to his pocket. "The Sarah Miller Foundation exists because a remarkable woman understood what truly matters in life. In her honor, and for all families facing Impossible challenges, we commit to continuing her legacy of love, resilience, and unwavering support. Later, as the evening wound down, Maxwell found Emma yawning beside the dessert table. "Ready to go home?" he asked. She nodded sleepily, leaning against him. "Did Mum hear your speech?" The question caught him off guard. "I don't know," he answered. "Honestly, what do you think?" "I think she did," Emma said with certainty. "She always heard the important things." As they gathered Ethan and prepared to leave, Victoria joined them, her hand briefly touching Maxwell's, in a gesture that had become increasingly common, a silent communication they were still exploring with careful optimism. "Successful evening," she observed. "The foundation raised over $2 million. "The most successful part," Maxwell replied, watching as Mrs. Winters helped Ethan with his coat, "is that I think William and Sarah would both be proud of what we're building. Not just Pierce Industries, not just the foundation, but something far more valuable, a family forged from unexpected circumstances, stronger for the challenges they had overcome together." 1 year to the day after finding the twins in his Ferrari, Maxwell stood in his garage, watching as Emma carefully placed a small bouquet of daisies on the car's hood. The sleek vehicle, once his prized possession maintained in pristine condition, now showed subtle signs of its expanded role. A small scratch on the passenger door from Ethan's science project, a barely noticeable stain on the leather from Emma's juice box. "What's this for?" Maxwell asked, gesturing to the flowers. "It's our anniversary," Emma explained, adjusting the blooms. "1 year since we came to live with you. The Ferrari is important because that's where you found us. It's where our family started," Ethan added seriously, standing beside his sister. The observation struck Maxwell deeply. He'd spent the first 42 years of his life with a narrow definition of family, a business relationship defined by shared DNA and responsibilities. Now, at 43, he understood it as something far more profound. "I have something for you both," Maxwell said, reaching into his pocket. He withdrew 2 small velvet boxes. "For our anniversary." The twins exchanged excited glances before carefully opening their gifts. Inside each box lay a gold compass, small and elegant, with their initials engraved on the back. "These are to remind you that no matter where life takes you, you'll always have a place to call home," Maxwell explained, "and people who love you." Emma immediately hung hers around her neck, while Ethan examined the mechanism with typical thoroughness, opening it to study how it worked. "We have something for you, too," Emma announced. She nodded to Ethan, who retrieved a large envelope from behind a toolbox. Inside was a family portrait, not a photograph, but a painting created by the twins, with help from their art teacher. It showed Maxwell, Emma, and Ethan sitting on the mansion's front steps, with Victoria beside them and Mrs. Winters standing behind. Even Button the teddy bear had been included, propped between Emma and Ethan. "It's for your office," Ethan explained, "so when you're working, you can remember what you're coming home to." Maxwell studied the painting, noting the careful attention to detail, the way Ethan had captured his serious expression, but with the hint of a smile, how Emma had painted herself leaning slightly against Maxwell's arm. It was the first family portrait he'd been part of since his mother's death 33 years earlier. "It's perfect," he said, his voice slightly rough. "Thank you both." The past year had brought changes no one could have predicted. The mansion renovation had led to unexpected discoveries. Old family photographs hidden in attic trunks, letters between his parents that revealed a warmer relationship than Maxwell had witnessed, even some of his own childhood toys carefully preserved. By his mother before her death, Pierce Industries had evolved as well. The Sarah Miller Foundation had become an integral part of the company's community engagement, enhancing rather than damaging the corporate reputation. Victoria's leadership as COO had freed Maxwell to focus on strategic vision while maintaining his commitment to being home for dinner with the twins. Most significantly, Maxwell himself had changed. The man who once measured days in productivity metrics and quarter-end reports now counted success differently. In Ethan's improved chess skills, in Emma's growing confidence, in evenings spent helping with homework or reading bedtime stories. The relationship with Victoria had deepened gradually, evolving from professional respect to friendship to something more. She had become a regular presence at family dinners and weekend outings, her analytical mind and warm humor fitting surprisingly well into their unconventional family dynamic. "Can we take the Ferrari today?" Ethan asked, breaking into Maxwell's thoughts. "For our anniversary? Where would you like to go?" Maxwell asked. The twins exchanged one of their silent communications before Emma answered, "To the Science Museum. They have a new space exhibit." "The Ferrari it is," Maxwell agreed. "Let me tell Victoria. She's finishing a call upstairs." Bo. The twins raced inside to prepare. Maxwell paused in the garage doorway, looking back at the car that had been the unlikely cradle for his new life. He remembered vividly the shock of finding the children there, the disorienting moment of reading his father's note, the way his knees had buckled as he collapsed against the vehicle. If someone had told him then what his life would look like. A year later, school drop-offs and science fair projects, bedtime stories and family game nights, a home filled with children's laughter and evidence of their presence, he would have dismissed it as impossible. Yet here he was, preparing to take his half-siblings to a science museum in his Ferrari, the car now fitted with 2 booster seats in unorthodox but safety-approved configurations. The man who had once defined himself solely as CEO of Pierce Industries now answered to different titles first: brother, guardian, family. Victoria appeared beside him, slipping her hand into his with the easy familiarity that had developed between them. "Ready for the museum?" "Almost," Maxwell replied, just remembering. She followed his gaze to the Ferrari. "It's been quite a year. The most important of my life," he acknowledged. Emma and Ethan burst back into the garage, now equipped with backpacks containing notebooks for recording their observations at the museum, a habit Maxwell had encouraged, recognizing Ethan's scientific precision and Emma's storytelling instincts. "Ready?" they announced in unison. As Maxwell helped them into their seats, making sure safety belts were properly fastened, he thought about how dramatically his priorities had shifted. The Ferrari, once maintained in isolation as a symbol of success, now served a purpose he could never have imagined, carrying his family on their adventures. "Everyone set?" he asked, sliding into the driver's seat with Victoria beside him. "Set!" came the chorus from the back. Maxwell started the engine, its powerful purr filling the garage. As they prepared to drive away, he caught sight of their reflection in the rearview mirror. 4 faces, different yet connected, embarking on an ordinary Saturday outing that felt anything but ordinary to him. 1 year ago, Maxwell Pierce had found 2 sleeping children in his car and a note that changed everything. Today, he drove that same car with the children wide awake and full of questions about the universe, the future wide open before them. The Ferrari eased down the driveway, carrying not just passengers, but a family, complicated, unexpected, and more precious than Maxwell had ever imagined possible.